Alright, Bible Story, Volume 4. Got David and Goliath on the front. Um, we're in Part 2, Story 1, Man with the Crown. And this painting is by Russell Harlan, and it does have his signature down at the bottom. I really do wonder where all these originals are at. And this is it. This is a copy of it, or the illustration. It has on the caption, it has the soldier who brought Saul's crown and bracelet to David as proof he had slain the king, was surprised when David turned on him for taking the life of the Lord's anointed. Which is true. I mean, he anointed him first, and the guy actually lied, but he didn't know. David didn't know. Okay, Part 2, Story 1, The Man with the Crown. And I got a different bookmark. Okay. David had only been back at Ziklag 2 days after his victory over the Amalekites when news reached him of the death of Saul. Everybody in the burnt city had been too busy clearing things up and sorting out the spoil they had taken to give a thought of what might have happened to Israel in their latest battle with the Philistines. Then came a messenger whose tidings changed all their lives. David took a one glance at him and guessed that he had brought bad news, for his clothes were torn and there was earth on his head. How went the matter? David asked him. Then the man told his story. He had happened to be on Mount Gilboa, yeah, Gilboa, where Saul was fleeing from the Philistines. He had seen the chariots closing in on him. Then, he said, Saul had called to him and begged him that he would kill him. So Saul begged him a thing. And then the messenger said, So, said the messenger, I stood upon him and slew him because I was sure that he could not live after that he had fallen. And I took the crown that was upon his head and the bracelet that was on his arm and had brought them hither unto my Lord. Oh, King James. Then he produced the royal regalia, and handed them to David. How everybody must have stared at that crown. No doubt this messenger thought he would have be given a lot of money by David for his and boast that he killed Saul, but he was mistaken. There was no happiness in Ziklag that day, nor any rejoicing over a fallen foe. Everybody mourned and wept and fasted until even. So it says, until even. For Saul and for Jonathan his son and for the people of the Lord and for the house of Israel, because they were fallen by the sword. The messenger couldn't understand that. Why all this weeping? He wondered. Had he not brought good news? But he had another surprise coming. Angrily, David turned on him and demanded why he was not afraid to destroy the Lord's anointed. Slaying the king was to David a terrible crime. Go near and fall upon him, he ordered, and all of the young men killed him on the spot. Then David, ever the poet, wrote these lines about Saul and Jonathan, whom he loved so much. Beauty of Israel is slain upon thy high place. How are the mighty fallen? Tell it not in Gath. Publish it not in the streets of Askelon. Askelon, yeah, that's what it says. Lest the daughters of the Philistines rejoice. Saul and Jonathan were lovely and pleasant in their lives, and in their death they were not divided. They were swifter than eagles. They were stronger than lions. How are the mighty fallen in the midst of battle? O Jonathan, thou wast slain in thine high place. I am distressed for thee. My brother Jonathan, very pleasant hast thou been unto me. Thy love to me was wonderful, passing the love of women. Ooh, that sounds weird. Okay, but this is King James and it's skipping around. Okay, how are the mighty fallen? The weapons of war perish. So David mourned for Jonathan and for Saul too, despite all his unkindliness. No wonder God loved David and said that he was the man after his own heart. And then, of course, it has an illustration of David writing the story, and then Saul and Jonathan and lion and an eagle. And this is what it looks like. It's a two-pager. Get it in focus enough. And there it is. And that was part one. Part two, story one. All right, we're gonna, like I do, I break them up, and I'm gonna break it, and then we'll go to the next story.